At this point, I would like to introduce Tony Lovell. Can't see him. Oh, there, no, lost him. About 10 years ago, Bruce and Tony had a dream. It has been realised by Tony some 2 years ago, and Bruce knew it was going to happen. Tony has worked tirelessly to ensure it has happened, and I want to acknowledge him today for the long hours of work and thought and travel and hunting dollars that has gone into making the dream a reality. Thank you, Tony, so much from the Ward family. I am sure it has not been easy without your mate beside you. Thank you.
That's all right. No, that's all right. Oh, geez, that's bright. Thanks, Suze. Yeah, Bruce was a magic little bugger, there's no doubt about that. So I've got a few things to cover. I want to do a little bit about Bruce, a little bit about the SLM thing, I'll transition in the business, a bit about what we're doing, some practical stuff, and then just words of wisdom for Uncle Tony. So if we cover that. Bruce, three things about Bruce. 60th birthday, the boys organised a... I rang around people and just said, can you just write a few words about Bruce? I want to put a little book together about Bruce. Okay, so you've got this book from all these people who've known Bruce for a very long time. Presented the book to Bruce and got a very less than what I expected result from Bruce, because the theme that kept coming through from almost everybody who knew Bruce was, he's such a nice man. He's such a nice man. And Bruce hated being such a nice man. But having said that, as Sue said, that every group that he ever worked with was the best group of people, great group of people, great group of people. In all the time I knew him, there was only two people who he described in anything other than glowing terms, and I don't know what they did to him, but it must have been nasty. It must have been bad. Okay. So when Bruce was passing, he got... so we looked at the properties, we looked at a lot of places together, and part of Padua Park, a savannah type area, was a bit that was his happy place. And so David came out and took some footage, etc. And when Bruce had died and was cremated, we were very fortunate to have that he wanted to have some of his ashes spread. So the essence of Bruce lives on that property, which is, I think, helping it work a lot. I'd left and I spoke to him the last time, and at that stage it turned out that there was two types of cancer, and the treatment for type A was upsetting type B, and the treatment for type B was upsetting type A, and so it was not looking good. I got to London, and about a day or so later Bruce had died. In the meantime, the way I found out was I got an email from Bruce, and it was Monty Python-esque. It was like it was written by the Monty Python team. It was, "Dear sir, I must apologise most profusely for the inconvenience that my demise will cause your business." I'm going, what? It was a strange little email, but that was Bruce. So this is on Padua Park, and when David had gone around looking at, and David, his son, is working for us, which is fantastic. David had gone around and found this little piece of country, and sitting on a stump was somebody done years ago, a little koala painting that had the words "Care for a piece of paradise," which indicates that for a long time this has been pretty special. So if we just... Do I do that? Yeah. So Mark Stevenson, who you'll meet this afternoon, who spent a week with Bruce and I, and before he wrote his book, and described it as I think Bruce's influence here, the best week of his life, which we find a lot, wrote these words for Bruce, and that's sitting down in the middle of Padua Park. So it'll take off shortly with one of those little drones that are a great piece of gear. And what you've got is, it's the end of, it's flood out country, so it's the Warrego River runs out in a big flood, and down the bottom of it these areas fill up, and there's a big tree in the middle which is a coolabah tree, which has got to be 350 or 400 years old, and it is enormous. And on the branches of that tree you'll see sitting up in the middle is probably 50 or 60 bird nests. So at the right time, this place must be incredibly alive. So what we've done is we've fenced off about 100 acres around it. We're going to run water into it. People have said, so you're fencing off to keep the livestock out? And I said, that would be totally disrespectful for Bruce. We have fenced it off with the intention of beating the crap out of it with livestock on a regular basis. And just see what happens, so it'll be quite interesting. So that little area Sitting here, we just got the bulldozer to dig out, and the idea is we'll just fill that up, and there's little bird nests and roosts, and we'll try and keep the thing going a bit. So that's that part of it. So that's Brucey. Okay. As Susie mentioned before, Bruce had led a fairly charmed life through to about 2001 when he moved into Sydney, and into every life a little rain must fall. So I rang him in about 2001 and started talking to him, and I found out about the holistic management book. It made sense to me at a business level as well as a farm level. So I grew up on a farm, and for my sins I'm a chartered accountant as well, so the whole thing sort of made sense. And when I rang Bruce, he'd just moved to Sydney with the intention to try to do the transition to the city, and I was in the city trying to understand how to explain it to clients. We started working along, just starting talking. I did a course with Bruce, and that started the annoying by Tony process that continued for about a decade. Alan spoke at a conference in Armidale in 2003, 2004. And at the end of the conference, the keynote speech was, if you think this stuff's important, if you think it matters, if you think it needs to be done, get off your bum and go and do something about it. So I sent an email to Bruce, 13th of April 2004, and said, this is what I think we need to do, this is the size, this is the scale, this is the way the program works. I can do all the other bits and pieces of it, but I need some assistance with the holistic management, that actual implementation bit, and I'd like to hire you to do it. Bruce, in about a second, said, how about we do it as a joint venture instead of a contract? And sometimes you make a good decision, and very quickly I just said yes, and that's where we started. So over the next period of time, I was thinking about it yesterday when Joel was speaking and other people are speaking about it, and it's almost at one level that we're talking about a bottom-up approach. So we're building little family farms and little family businesses, and we're making all these little bits and pieces. Okay, and I'd sort of looked at the thing and said, well, maybe we just do the same stuff but with more zeros on the end of it. So we've got millions of acres and billions of acres that need to be healed, and we can do that two ways, and they're not exclusive. We can do that lots of little pieces at a time, or we can go and take great big chunks. Okay, so Joel was talking about nooks and crannies, and on his properties, in some properties, nooks and crannies are small. On a lot of the properties we're looking at, nooks and crannies are 5,000 and 10,000 acre pieces. Okay, so there's chunks in there. Joel mentioned about getting money from the city to the bush, okay, and doing that by somebody giving you a $100 bill at a time. And my sort of thinking was maybe we should get somebody to give us $100 million at a time. So it's basically the same stuff with zeros. So what I'll do is, this is SLM the business. So we'll just have a look at what we're doing, what the approach is, and some practical stuff. So people in here, speak slower. I am speaking slowly. You should be on the inside. This is painful. Okay, I know, sorry. I shall now enunciate my words with more care. Thank you, Daniela. I want to just cover the fact, just a little bit of I did ask Daniela how long have I got, and Daniela does Bruce's thing as well. So have I got 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or 40 minutes? And I got yes and no to each of those times. Go. I'm just going to keep going, that's all right. Okay. All right, so the idea of SLM is, it's exactly the point that there needs to get money from the city back into the bush. Okay, the flow's gone the wrong way. It's exactly what Joel was saying, just done differently. So the money was going the wrong direction. In a lot of cases, we've got exactly the same situation in Australia. We have an ageing population of farmers. We have people where we haven't romanced them back onto the land. We've got a gap. So the properties that we've been buying, we bought properties from people in their 60s and in their 70s, and we bought a property from an 84-year-old man and his 82-year-old wife who were still actively running the property. Okay, now if your kids haven't come home by then, they're not coming home. Okay, so you have a lack of social capital, you have a lack of financial capital, you have a lack of ecological capital. Okay, that group of people are not going to get the financial capital together. Okay, somebody needs to do that. That group of people at this stage haven't got the emotional capital to start to heal the ecological capital. Okay, so there's a process that we can bring to the table with that. Okay. The social capital is still there. So in a lot of cases what you'll have is sort of our target for managers for our property are almost a second son. So where the eldest son's inherited the property and the second son, what do I do? Okay, so there's an opportunity, there's a passion, there's an interest, there's an enthusiasm, but there's a gap. So it's a case of trying to fill that gap. So the idea of the SLM program is to raise a couple of $100 million, to buy a couple of million acres, to run a couple of 100,000 cows, to do this stuff with zeros. Okay, and that's what we've done at this stage. So at this point, we've got $100 million under management. We've got about 1.2 million acres under management. There's 15,000 cattle on the place at the moment. We started in June 2012, bought the first property in December 2012, did the infrastructure in June 2013. So what you'll see here is the property Padua Park and Green Hills. This is sort of the proving ground, okay? And the stuff works. Okay, so if anyone's got some doubts about it, it works. Okay. All right, so Padua's our first developed property, provides proof of concept from the investor's point of view, okay? Aggregation of 2 properties totalling about 43,000 hectares, 110,000 acres, cost about $10 million to buy. The development, the water, the fencing, cattle yards, motorbikes, buggies, 4-wheel, it's about another $2.5 million, okay? So there's 4,000 properly managed cattle wandering around on the place, for a change. Stocking, it was also one of the driest years, so we were very, very fortunate that the gods did smile on us, and rather than getting soft on us and starting in a very nice season, we actually started in one of the driest in the last 120 years. So it was, let's see whether or not you can harden up, slow down more. Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's not hard. Come on, people, it's not me, it's you, pick up. Can you people listen quicker? Okay. All right, so we brought through basically 50% more cattle, more animals on the place during one of the driest years than conventionally, and we didn't buy any hay and we didn't buy any grain and we didn't buy anything, we just used what was there. There were a couple of times when the girls were a bit upset, but they worked through it, which was fine. Animals are performing well, positive environmental impacts. There's enough grass on the property in front of us to take us through till Christmas, which gives you, you need to have those buffers, you need to have that cover in front. That's where we're operating. So some of the aspects, for example, people who are talking here in London and you've got a farm 300 acres and it's an hour out of London, well, you've got 20 million people on your doorstep, and where Joel is in Virginia, you've got Washington not far away. So there's things you can do there, and you can do aspects of it. Where we are, we're 900 to 1,000 kilometres away from capital cities. Okay, so we can't do chicken tractors and we can't do a lot of vertical stuff. We have to head in a different direction. We have to approach it differently. But that's the range of country we've got. So there's from some fairly hard, hungry country that costs $15 an acre through to some stuff that's $150 an acre. So there's a range of properties, there's a range of approaches. So what you'll see with the infrastructure we're doing on Padua, the concepts stay consistent, the physical way we'll actually do things varies. Okay? So have a look at what the place looked like beforehand. Be warned, there's some horrible shots in here, some horrible scenes to come. That's one of them. So that's the front entrance of Padua, just the idea of the property, it looks okay. That's the homestead. So it's giving you an idea there was reasonable infrastructure, it wasn't run down. People were able to make money off this country anyway, the way it was managed, so it's not devastated. You can see it's big, it's open, it's flat, it's easy to manage. So from our point of view, that's very important to us. There's not much point having a lot of scale if it's on the side of a cliff. Okay. Big open grassland, so all of that's us, and a bit the other way. It's got flooding country and then it's got little sandy ridges, so there's lots of variation. There's an incredible amount of biodiversity on there, which is great. We have underground water, so we don't do any irrigation obviously, but that's the Great Artesian Basin. So that water flows out of a borehole 600 metres down, 8 litres a second, just keeps coming. Okay, so it's a fantastic resource which up until now has been used a little inappropriately. So that was the infrastructure that was on the place. You've got a little concrete trough that's broken, you've got what they call a bore drain. This country's tabletop flat, like it drops a foot every mile, and the way they used to distribute the water, again, before they had polypipe, before they had everything, was basically putting a ditch in. Now, the end of that ditch might be 80 miles or 60, 70 miles away from the start. So in summer, the water at the end is not particularly palatable. Okay. This is a little bit of the thinking. So this is our scale of our nooks and crannies. Okay. That's the property. So that's a road down here. So all that's in there is basically Padua Park and Green Hills. Okay, so all I've done is, the wiggle line down the middle is a bore drain. It's one of those snaky bits of water, and then the other things are those little troughs. So it's where water was for cattle, and we just GPS points, and then we just draw a circle, 2 kilometre circle around it. Cattle will walk about 2 kilometres to water. They don't want to walk much further than that. So what you end up with is the areas next to water being flogged out, and then nothing, and then nothing, and then you get 3 kilometres away and nobody's using any of the country. So on this property, there was probably a third of it that was too far away from water and rarely, if ever, got grazed, except by desperately hungry cattle. Paddock sizes. Okay. Conventional agriculture, conventional grazing management can be simply described as a small number of animals in a very large area for a very long period of time. What we're doing is we put a larger number of animals in a smaller area for a shorter period of time. That's a very simple part. The subtlety is we get to define larger, smaller and shorter, and we get to change it every day. But to do that, you've got to have some starting point, you've got to have some infrastructure. So what you've got here, if you look at the block on the left, that was the Green Hills property. That was 36,000 acres without an internal fence. Okay? There's not much you can do with that. That's the sort of cattle handling facilities, which is okay if you're doing 50 cows. It's not real good if you're doing 5,000. You're very tired. So what did we do? Okay. Remember, that was the paddock sizes, that was the shape of the thing and where the water was. That's what it looks like now. Okay, so we put 100 kilometres of pipe in, we put 600 kilometres of fencing in, we've taken it from 18 paddocks to 240 paddocks. There's water around the place. That is actually the grazing plan, to show you an idea. We process the cattle in this set of cattle yards in March. We wanted to process them in that set of cattle yards in June. Okay, so people go, oh, it's going to take so much labour to move all these cows. You've got to move cows all the time. You've got helicopters and dogs and motorbikes and blah, 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 blah. And you just go, okay, well, if I want to process the cows in the cattle yards on the 16th of June, which paddock should they be on the 15th of June? Tricky question. Okay, and if that one on the 15th, where should they be? You just work backwards. So you can see the numbers, tick, 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 tick. Okay? It's not totally formulaic, but at the scale we're doing, we have to have some discipline. Okay. That's just some of the gear going in. So put it in once, do it right. So while there's, if a job's worth doing, it's worth doing well versus worth doing poorly. What I decided to do was we do it well because we got enough examples, and with Bruce's experience of what doing poorly was, and we knew what to do well was because somebody else had already done it poorly. So we tried to avoid that step, which is good. That just gives you an idea of the size of the pipe that we put in versus the size of the pipe that was there before. So we can now actually push some water around. And we've got 2 of those pipes going out, not just one. Instead of one simple little pump, we've got 4 pumps. They're computer controlled. They connect together. If there's a problem, they call the mobile phone of the manager. The pump rings the phone of the manager and says, I'm in trouble, and he goes out and fixes it. Those are our water points. So they're a thing called a cup and saucer, a concrete trough at the base, tank in the middle of it. We can water comfortably 5,000 cattle around those. Okay, so you don't need a hell of a lot. You need flow and capacity, not volumes of the things. That just shows you the fencing infrastructure. So basically, it's a single wire electric fence. There's a post every 50 metres. Okay, you can put up a kilometre in an hour. We can fence a water point in 2 days and just keep going. So it's a nice steady rhythm to it. We use these little electric bungees instead of gates. That heading out there into the distance is one of the fence lines. So they become very unobtrusive. We don't have problems with kangaroos. If you don't have it too tight and you don't worry too much and the animals aren't under pressure, they don't get taken out by kangaroos and emus. We've put up 600 kilometres of fencing with a post every 40 metres. That's a lot of posts, that's a lot of insulators. We've replaced a dozen in 18 months. Okay, so. Set of cattle yards. That's the cattle crush that we've got now, which is a hydraulic crush, so it's better for the cattle, it's better for the staff, it's better to process. So we can put 800 to 1,000 animals a day through nice and steadily. And it's not a case of just getting them through quickly for getting them through quickly. It's while ever they're in the yards, they're not eating grass. They're not doing what they want to do. So there's a balance on that. In terms of just the control of the process, we have in Australia a National Livestock Identification Scheme. That little round button has got a radio frequency tag in it, which is unique for every one of those. That goes in one ear of the cow. Our visual identification goes in the other. She comes through, we scan her, we weigh her, we put a description of her in there. We record whether she's pregnant or not, whether she had the calf, how heavy the calf. There's a lot of data comes out of it. And you start to improve your genetics, you get much, much better control over the herd. Grazing management, what have we done? That's now small trucks for us because everything scales up a bit, so they're bigger than that. There's the first lot of cattle turning up. That's our happy cows. So you can see basically the herd there and around the water point. So they're just coming up to move through a water point. Okay, so that's the sort of scale that it's working at. That's the electric fencing. People say they won't stay behind a single wire electric fence. The people who say that have never touched a single wire electric fence. Okay, you stay behind one. Okay. And again, that's the girl, they're just waiting patiently, they know what's happening. Most times fencing is really, really tough, and it needs to be tough because the animals want to be on the other side. The grass is always greener, and usually the grass is. With this process, the grass is the same, and they know they'll move anyway, so that's just showing how calm the cattle get. So that's just at the water point, that's Graham's shadow on one of the cows, that's just, you know. And if they're calm and they're relaxed and they're happy, then everything's working nicely. Okay, we did this video. I thought, I'm not sure how many people here actually operate cattle, work with cattle, etc., etc. We'll just see what happens. So all we did was a little drone, which is a really cool piece of gear. We've got to get one. And a little GoPro camera, and we just recorded a move of the cattle through a water point. To give you some perspective on the scale of the thing, this country is considered to run a cow to every 40 to 50 acres. So these paddocks are about 500 acre paddocks. So cattle are coming through from one 500 acre paddock to another 500 acre paddock. 1,000 acres, you'd normally run 20 or 30 cows in there. As you'll see, we might have a few more. So the bulls are in at the moment, so we've got a controlled join, just a 6-week join, so up we go. That's the water point. Don't expect green verdant grass, this is Australia. Okay. We do get green at times, but not at the moment. So. So instead of 20 or 30, there's 4,500. Okay, 4,500 cows, there's 36 camels and 32 donkeys in there. This paddock in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see that's the one, see the difference in colour, that's where they were the day before. They've then moved through into that one, and you can just see at the back the difference in colour, that's the impact of it. Okay, so these paddocks, the cattle have been brought in there, that goes actually 2.5 kilometres out the back, so there's plenty of space, they're in a 500 acre paddock. But watch them move through and see, there's a cow there still grazing, so everything's going past, she's come through the water point, she's put her head down, she's eating. Okay, if everything's working right, they're not rushing out the back, they're not stressing. The only reason they start getting moved further out is because these guys want to come through, and there's a bit of pressure to move. But you see here the camels start to come down. Okay, so they're cool, they're great. But the cattle give them space. Now watch at the water point, see how everything's flowing through. The cattle come through in the fast lane. Okay. See, the cows don't speed up. The camels have gone through like this and the cattle have just let them go. And then once they get at the other end of it, there's cows stopped and grazing. The whole thing's happening, so they're moving through. It's almost like fluid flowing. Back up here, these cows will be there until the end. Okay, so they work into it. There's a whole social structure that happens that's really cool to watch. So the lead is always the lead, the tail's always the tail. There are cows that walk to the back of the paddock, there are cows that like the front of the paddock. So the diversity thing, you know, a cow's not a cow. Cows are expressing their cowishness, or count, whatever it is. So here they go through it, and see how they're spreading nicely? Okay. So that's the animals flowing through, that's just the nice steady rhythm. Those are the paddocks they're still to graze, and these ones here, so. Now when I said about if we wanted to split the herd, if we wanted to make it different, all I've got to do is walk in there, close that gate and put half the herd in here, and I've changed the impact dramatically in one move. I can take a third of the herd that way, I could take 10% of the herd that way. So it's not every day the same. The structure that we've got, the infrastructure is consistent. How we use the infrastructure is a smart part of it, and that's where the secret sauce, the herbs and spices are in that. That's me just standing there. Now if you watch, the cattle are all doing what most things do, which is give me a wide berth. But, and then one cow, she just trots off and everything's happy. So, see this little one? I'm facing, she came up to have a look. And then after a while she decides, oh no, and off she bounces. Okay, she doesn't just walk off, she just, oh okay, that'll do. That cow going back, she's lost a calf bellowing. Yeah? You're supposed to be with me. So she's gone back, she's come through and she's gone, whoops, I forgot something. That's what you want. You want that mothering instinct. You want the herding instinct. We've got to rebuild a lot of that because that's gone as well. But fence line to fence line. They haven't come through and gone in one direction. They've gone through and just, you know, spread beautifully. That's those last couple of cows still coming through, and these little ones, there's always a few that pop through the fence. The interesting thing is when they pop through the fence, when you start to move, they want to pop back in again. So they're not trying to get out of the fence, they're trying to come back to the herd every time, and that's just them spreading. So we've finished the move, they've moved at the speed they wanted, and they're already best part of a kilometre out from the water point, spread nicely from one side to the other. Okay? And that's our little process. So that horrible, strenuous process. So we have to endure that on a daily basis, but somebody's got to do it. And go back into our... Okay, cool. Why do we have camels? Okay, 2 reasons. Main reason, camels are really cool animals. They're fantastic. No, they're one of the few animals that when you're looking at the bum of them, they can turn around and look at you. So you get this... That's basically biodiversity. So see where they're grazing? The bottom of that is the height a cow can get to. So the cows have trimmed sort of up to that, but they can't get past it. So the camels do that part of it. Very quickly, the cattle work out, oh, hang on, they'll drop some feed here. And we've actually had cows mug camels for feed. I had 4 cows stand around, and then when the camels pull a tree down, the cows will chase the camel away to grab the thing. Biodiversity is one of the things that Bruce always said. Biodiversity is very, very important. So we've got biodiversity in our animals, we need to have biodiversity in our staff. So that's our mustering crew heading out with... So there's a bit of variety in there. Graham Finlayson, the guy in the middle, Stacey Brown on the left, and Will Gray, a visitor from Manchester, on the right. So that's cool. Okay, what's the impact? All right, so the couple of things we need to have is what's happening on the ground and what's happening financially. So we'll look at both of those. Top left-hand corner, under conventional management, perennial grassplants are about 1 metre apart. Plenty of space to fill in the gaps. Okay. Top right-hand corner, 9 days after a grazing, okay, each one of those little yellow dots is a new grass plant. There's 100 in a square metre. People say you must have to plant seeds, you must have to do something. They're there waiting. Bottom left-hand corner is that same spot 3 weeks later. That looks a little bit better. And the bottom right-hand corner is just the size that we can get green grass at times. Photo, in the water bottle is on the same post. Top left-hand photo is looking over into the neighbour's property. The bottom photo is onto our place on the same day. Okay, they are seriously right next to each other. Talking to the guys there, we had already at that stage in the previous 12 months taken out twice as many days of feed as he had, okay, and we put another 4,000 cows through there 2 days later. So in 12 months we took 3 times, and that's our first run through. So this stuff is pretty cool. That's at an individual grass plant level. So the plant on the left-hand side would be, say, at that end of this table, there's a fence in the middle, and then here. They are no more than 10 metres apart. And that's exactly the same species of plant under exactly the same growing conditions, on the same day, everything else is the same. If you look at the total amount of biomass, the health, the vigour, and multiply that, one of those every square metre on 43,000 hectares, that's a lot of plant. Judy Earle, who's a friend of the HM group, she's an independent PhD, she does a lot of monitoring. We had her duty in to do independent monitoring in April 2013, April 2014. We had double the number of species, increase in biodiversity. Okay, that's fantastic. So there's more things doing things. We've got lots more employees than we had this year than we had last year. Okay, some basic things. Ground cover. What percentage of the property is covered by plants instead of bare ground's gone from 18%, it's doubled to 30%, almost 40%. Bare ground's dropped from 42% to 37% in one grazing, and the leaf litter, the dry stuff has really gone back into the ground. So this is what Elaine Ingham and everyone's talking about, the whole speed of the cycle, everything's starting to kick, everything's starting to get active, which is great. Performance data. At the end of the day, we have to produce a return. I don't think, the way that we pitch to investors is, this stuff makes money anyway. It's not pitching it from the perspective that, look, it's wonderful for the ecosystem, it's wonderful for people, it's wonderful for the planet. We have to do all these things, by the way, you can make some money. We flip that around. If the stuff works properly, it should make money. Now, if it makes good money, and it doesn't need to be ridiculous figures, what you've then got is all the biological stuff, all the ecological stuff, all the increase in resilience, all of those factors actually decrease the risk. So it decreases the volatility, so they can actually accept a lower return. You just need to package the thing. So it's an add-on rather than the core factor. Long-term conventional stocking rate in that area, that property would run about 2,500 livestock units. Okay. During the last 12 months, those are our actual numbers. We've averaged about 3,750. So we've averaged 50% above the long-term average, and the long-term average is good seasons, bad seasons, it's average. We've done that in one of the driest years in the last 120. Okay, so it's a fair sort of a test on it. That's our rolling rainfall, our 12-month rolling rainfall. Our long-term average rainfall is 377 mils. Okay, we got down to 161, which is pretty tight. Okay, we then got a little bit of rain, and we got a week of 48, 49 and 50-degree days, okay, which didn't help. If we do adjusted to animal days per 100 mils of rain, so let's come back to a rainfall adjusted, we're actually double, better than double, okay, in the very first year, and there's a long way to go. Because we can weigh individual cattle, because we've got the ear tags and the identification, we know what happened. So we can go through and say, these were the cows that we processed in March, this is what they weighed. These are the cows that we processed in June, this is what they weighed, and we can do the difference. And the maths is pretty simple. There's 274,000 kilos of beef at an average price of $1.55, $1.60, produced during that period in 90 days, and it didn't cost us that much to run. Okay, so you can see the numbers dropping out of it. The average daily gain was about 0.75 of a kilo off grass. That's pretty good. That's cows, calves, that's everything. That's across the entire herd. We had some cattle put on 120 kilos in 90 days off a straight grass program, and it wasn't really flash grass. Okay, what have we got? So experience shows it works on Padua, and happy cows are profitable cows. Okay, so that's just the idea. That was just some practical stuff as to what we're doing. And that's how it works on this particular property with our particular fund. That's the first property that we've got up and running. The others are all rolling. The development is kicking through. Oh, sorry. That bit just says that if anyone has any questions, we've never seen you, and we don't know any person in this room. Okay, sorry. You can, sir. You just have it.
When you were the couple moving to the next paddock, you said sometimes you choose to split them.
I'm saying sometimes we could. We could, yeah.
Okay. I was just going to ask about, because you'd already mentioned the social hierarchies, arrangements they have.
Yeah.
Their own structures, family structures, whatever. So if you divide them, you're going to do upset.
They all come through in the same thing, so you're only going to get a couple. Yeah. And they get over it pretty quickly. Yeah. Okay, we'll do it later, because I just got one more thing I want to cover, which is a bit of channeling Bruce. This will go quickly. Relax. So, okay. Traps for young players. All I wanted to cover here is, having spent a lot of time with Bruce and annoying him relentlessly, what works, what doesn't, how do you get people converted, who turns up to the courses, which ones take the stuff on, which ones don't, why don't you get, just keep going. So what we've got here is a lot of people who are going to get all enthusiastic and passionate and go out and want to start changing the world, okay, and we've had that for the last 20, 30, 40 years, and it sort of, there's some things that we need to understand in there, I think, okay. We're talking about change, okay, we're changing, from Alan's point of view, the whole way we think about things. From Joel's point of view, changing from thinking about expanding horizontally, expanding vertically. Elaine Ingham changed my concept of sticky bacteria yesterday. So we just do some change here. So this gets a bit interactive. Okay, so what I'd like to do, I think one of the first steps in making the world a better place is if everyone could just listen to it and do exactly what I say for the next few minutes. Everyone stand up, okay? Pair off with somebody, okay? And look at the person. Okay, you are going to have to identify this person in a police lineup very shortly. Look at their appearance, see what they're doing, note the person. You could describe them, you can pick them out of a lineup, okay? Turn away from the person. All right, now you turn away from that person and make one change to your appearance. Take off your glasses, take off your hat, put your scarf on back, something. Make one change to your appearance. Okay, all right? Turn back and look at the person. Identify the change. Everyone's got the change? Okay, cool. All right. Okay. All right. Now I want you to, okay. Come on, kiddies. Now turn away from the person again. Turn away from the person. Make 4 more changes to your appearance. 4 more changes to your appearance. Come on. Okay. Preferably stop short of nudity. Okay. All right. I'm going to turn back. I'm going to note the 4 changes. Note all the changes you've done. Okay. Very good. Okay. Okay. Now everybody sit down. Okay, everybody sit down again. All right. Okay. All right, everybody sit down, sit down, sit down. Yep, that's it, sit down. Okay. Okay, now, at this point, a couple of things we need to realise. First thing is, I promised to run a benevolent dictatorship, but you people make it very, very difficult. I gave simple, clear instructions. I said, do exactly what I said. Who said put everything back? Okay, nobody said put everything back. So what did we learn out of that? We learned that in things with change, a little change is easy. The first one was easy. Okay? A lot of change is hard, and given a chance, you go straight back to where you were. Okay? And everyone did it. Now, there's a Chris Christopherson song that has a line in it, a longing for the freedom of my chains. Okay, so it's where you're comfortable, where you're comfortable. We're talking about change. All right, communication. We've got to communicate this to people. All right, so this is the thing we need to go out and we need to communicate to people. A few things about communication. Okay, the biggest single problem in communication is the illusion that it's taken place. All right, so just be aware of that. A conversation has 2 parts. When you're in a conversation with somebody, you've got 2 parts, 2 roles, aren't they? What are the 2 roles? Well, there's talking and there's listening. Okay, too often the 2 roles that people are in a conversation are talking and waiting to talk. Okay. How many times have you had that happen? Oh, sorry, did the middle of my sentence interrupt the beginning of yours? Okay, so people, this is not us, obviously, I'm talking about other people here, but this is what can happen to you. All right, Eli Goldratt was a little Israeli physicist, a clever little fellow who said, in physics there is no conflict. Okay, so if you've got a conflict, something's gone wrong. And the thing is, first one, get your definitions right. Make sure you're talking about the same thing. Okay, Susie's yes doesn't necessarily mean yes. So first thing, get your definitions right, and second thing, challenge your basic assumptions. A lot of Alan's work is around challenging your basic assumptions. Joel's it's challenging all the time. Okay, so that's the thing. What we've got is a hell of a lot of information we've had. We've got fantastic new information. We now know stuff that we didn't know, and we're sure that the people who don't understand this stuff would just understand this stuff if they knew the stuff that we know, and we just got to tell them the stuff that we know because it's such good stuff. Okay, what's the problem with that? The problem with that is that facts don't necessarily have the power to change people's minds. In fact, quite the opposite. Okay? When misinformed people, particularly political partisans, and there's some politics around this whole conversation, were exposed to corrected facts and news stories, they rarely change their minds. In fact, they often became even more strongly set in their beliefs. Facts were not curing misinformation. Like an underpowered antibiotic, facts could actually make misinformation stronger. It could worsen the situation. So just simply going out there and telling people, did you know that, won't work. Okay? Peter Bagassian, as he says, is that the beliefs most people hold are not tethered to reality. They're not checked. And Eli Goldratt's one is that anyone who thinks they can use logic to counter emotion has never been married. Now, any wives whose husbands have gone and got the Harley know that one. So it's not just a male thing. Okay. All right, so we'll play a game I call Spaces and Ladders. Okay, so highest mountain, and this is interactive, highest mountain in the world is? Everest. Second highest? Third highest? We're in trouble. Okay, longest river in the world? Yeah, maybe. Second longest? Third longest? Not too sure, okay. What's a plumber do? Okay, we know what that does. Okay, what's a lawyer do? We know what that does. Okay, what's a chef do? We know those stuff, okay. Our storage capacity is limited and most of the spaces are already filled. So we've got something in our head for most things and we haven't got much depth on it. We know, but we already know what that is. So once we know what that is, we don't need to unknow it, we just know what it is. So guys at a conference with came out with this in the morning, that it's more important to create the space to be filled than it is to fill the space. Okay, so we've got a process where we need to create a space to be filled. George Lakoff, there's some really interesting work by George Lakoff on framing. So every conversation happens within a frame, and if you try and do facts, they don't work unless you understand the frame the person's coming from. And so there's a lot of stuff in politics around it. So you need to have the frame right. Okay? Words have meanings. Okay? So the words you use have meanings because people have that meaning in their head to start with. So again, we're following on the principle before, which is we're doing exactly what Tony says. So all I want you to do now is do this and don't do anything else, okay? Don't think of an elephant. Okay? Don't just that's one thing, just don't think of an elephant. Okay? So as soon as you say don't think of an elephant, what do you think of? Elephant. Okay? So calling up the negative of something still calls up the thing. Okay? So it's already in there. Livestock is a space in people's head. People already know what livestock is. They know what livestock is. So when you start talking to them about livestock in a different way, they already have that in their head. The risk we run is we start giving them more facts. And the more facts don't go in the direction we want, it takes them the other direction. Okay? So we need to create a new space. Okay? So we need to create a space in their head that isn't there at the moment. That's where you've seen properly managed livestock is one of the things that Savory are now talking about, and you saw that I made sure I put properly managed livestock in the presentation. Okay? So the idea is it's something different. First point, okay, that's what I covered with Bruce, is don't answer a question you haven't been asked yet. Think about the number of times when you're talking to somebody and somebody says something but they haven't asked you a question. Okay? Second thing is reframe the discussion. All right, so I think of the two steps. So come back to don't answer a question you haven't been asked yet. Somebody in a conversation with you says, eating meat's bad, or cows are worse than cars for climate change, or it takes a swimming pool of water to produce a pound of beef. Okay? And you're all sitting there going, I know that's not right, I know stuff. Okay? Right, so the risk you run is that when they come out with that, what are you going to do? They haven't asked you a question. Okay? So you don't have to answer anything. Okay? You don't have to at this point. They've made a statement, it's up to them to support their statement. You don't have to pull their statement apart. That's not the rules. Okay? So when somebody comes out with a statement like that, and you know it's completely wrong, what do you do? There's a couple of things you can do. One of the first things you can do okay? It'll only take seconds. When you do that, I've never had anybody... Count to yourself, okay? You won't get past 10 seconds. People can't stand silence, so they'll say something. And at that point, they've got to defend themselves. So just simply do nothing. Okay? But do count to yourself, otherwise you're going to break it. So it's like a game of chicken, whoever blinks. But just allow the space. Or say something non-threatening, okay? Now, surprisingly, my experience has been that when somebody comes out with a statement like that and you go, you idiot, it doesn't go well. So say something like, that seems like an awful lot of water, I wonder how they worked that out. How would somebody know that was true? Not how do you know that's true, which is confrontational. How would somebody know that's true? And what you'll find, you'll often reveal that they don't know. They just heard it somewhere and they parroted it. Okay? So they've seen it in the press. Okay? We only use 10% of our brain. How many people have heard that? How many people have said that? How many people have even thought about whether or not that makes sense? Okay? But it keeps parroted, sorry? Yeah, how many? Okay. So what you say, are you talking about livestock or properly managed livestock? Now, as soon as you say it's talking about livestock or properly managed livestock, you're going to get, I think, one or two responses. You're going to get, what's the difference, or what do you mean by properly managed livestock? Now, the point at which you get that question, what does it tell you? New space. They haven't got that filled in already. Okay? So there's a gap. We've got success. Okay? So we're now allowed to fill that with some information. Use a teaspoon, not a shovel. Okay? Just little bits. Work out what works for you. Pick one or two things that you're comfortable with and just, by the way, but just take it steadily. So the first thing is you've got to create the space to be filled, and once you've created the space, and I think the way to create the space is by giving them a different something. Livestock versus properly managed livestock. Huh? Okay? And that's when the question comes in. That's what I think the important part of it is. Okay, so properly managed cows are happy cows. Thank you.